Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
Oh, man, that music is so smooth. It makes me feel like I'm relaxing and at home or something. But we are not at home. We're here at work. America's Heroes Group, Roundtable, Mental Health Matters with partner Nami, Contra, Costa. And today is Saturday, April 2nd, 2022. April is Sexual Assault and Autism Awareness Month. Our host is the Honorable Cliff Kelley. I am his co-host, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold. And we have our executive producer, Glenda Smith, and the fantastic digital media producer by the name of Ivan Ortega of the fantastic company called Scouts Honor Productions. So today we are actually have a partner that we're going to talk to, and this is Gigi Crowder. She's the executive director of Nami, Contra, Costa in California. Nami is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, an advocacy group founded by family members of people with mental illness. So it's a very, very special group that is focused on the actual issues that are surrounding people who are suffering from mental illness. And today we're going to be talking about a particular subgroup of that, and this is addressing unsheltered veterans living with mental illness. Welcome, Gigi. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Why don't you take it away and tell us what are some of the special things that are happening with our unsheltered veterans when it comes to mental illness? We know, the things like traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder and depression, and with even the regular things that we see are things like Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So they are certainly not immune from those things. And so, what is it that they're facing that's special to their particular situation?
Okay, so veterans account for about 11% of the unsheltered adults in the United States. Mm-hmm. And sadly, that means that they're the largest number of individuals who are living with unaddressed mental health challenges on the streets. So
that's really important. I want to stop you for one quick second. But that 11%, now you have to remember that less than 1% of the country actually serves. So
right.
That's 11% coming out of 1% of people in the country who serve. So go ahead. Sorry.
Right. So, and of course, there's a lot of social stigma surrounding this particular social group, depending on what era they may have served in the military and how people feel about their service there. So we really do a lot of work, and I'm really appreciative of the new measures coming from our president to better address the needs of veterans who have served this country, came home, needed some support around whether it be education or mental health supports, and did not always find it so readily available. So NAMI has a special program called Homefront, where we work with individuals and try and connect them to the services. I think in the last 4 or 5 years, there has been some major, more positive change, but we're not nearly where we need to be in terms of addressing the needs. So we know the leading cause is unaddressed mental illness, PTSD, social isolation, unemployment. And I always share with individuals when a person is having a difficult time with feeling mentally well, they often will, and I call it self-medicate with substance abuse. So we are having a debate, a conversation about which comes first, the mental illness or the substance abuse. And I will always say the mental health, the unaddressed trauma comes before the substance abuse.
That makes total sense to me, because why would you have substance abuse if you don't have anything that you're trying to take care of? You're trying to, soothe depression, or you're trying to overcome a TBI or PTSD. So very well said. Yeah. So who's eligible for the Homefront program, and how does that work?
Well, the Homefront program allows for individuals who have and can share their veteran status, having an opportunity to go to the front of the line with housing programs that's offered by HUD.
Mm-hmm.
So I myself personally, I have several rental properties, and I prioritize working with the VASHA program, which is like Section 8, but only for veterans, which allows for them using only a third of their income to pay rent. So we have to have more. California's done a great job with that. Not all states have done such a great job, but it did result in a 2% decline in California, even though California also has the distinction of having the largest number of unsheltered vets. They also have more programs in place.
Oh, fantastic! So with this, I'm wondering. So you were saying that they are, moving towards the front of the line. So it's for HUD, for the housing. What other programs are they sort of, put, on sort of an accelerated course to take care of? Because I'm wondering about the mental health providers. At least in Illinois, there's a shortage of mental health providers, and I think it's a national problem. Psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, people who normally help people. So how, what are the inroads to getting the proper mental health care? Is it something that's really a main focus?
Well, I know a lot of states now have recognized that there's a shortage, but I also know a lot of vets only want to receive services from individuals who have a similar background. So what we've tried to do in California is have a loan forgiveness program to support individuals to go into the mental health field. Okay. But what we probably need to do is prioritize that program for vets who want to go back to school and go in and work in mental health. So we know there's a shortage of psychiatrists, psychologists, licensed clinical social workers. So there's also a movement for us to hire people with lived experience. So they don't necessarily have to have the credentialing, but they have to have the skill set needed to work with individuals as a peer or to work with the families of a vet as a family member. And so that's kind of taken some steam, took on some steam here in California. There was an opportunity because our governor has signed a bill that allows for us to bill Medi-Cal for individuals using their lived experience over the clinical skill set.
Well, it sounds like you have a good governor.
Well, so we have a progressive governor who often will share the fact that, he's working hard to try and address the unsheltered homelessness issues in California. He's actually also introduced the bill and specifically named veterans as some he thought would benefit from it, called Care Court. Now, it's not popular with the more peer groups because it would allow family members, police officers, social workers to have the individuals who are unsheltered kind of give up their rights to get the treatment. But if individuals truly understand mental health, they have to understand that sometimes when a person is living with a mental health challenge, they're not really aware of it, but they continue to put themselves at harm. So having a third party temporarily make decisions for them would greatly benefit individuals when they're in the deepest, darkest parts of a severe mental illness. And we see that a lot with our veterans.
It's really interesting because I'm currently getting a graduate degree from the University of Chicago, but it's a Master's of Science in Threat Response Management. And one of my professors was incredible, Bill Avenina, but he had introduced us to these different videos and things about, emergency situations. And one of the things that they mentioned was, any disaster, we have to look at ourselves not as victims, but as survivors, right? So that people come forward. So I'm just using that as a groundwork, a preface for you to talk about how did this organization come about, Nami? I think this is fantastic because it sounds like it's the family members of people with mental illness. So this is coming from a really strong grassroots community base, it sounds like.
Yeah. NAMI is the oldest in this nation grassroots organization that can be identified. So there's 600 affiliates across the nation. Each have their own 501c3, that means the nonprofit status. And if you interviewed the 600, I would say maybe 89% of them started over a kitchen table with mothers who were not pleased with the services that their loved ones were getting from the governmental agencies in their regions responsible for it. Wow. So somewhere in the early 70s, the individuals started, meeting and talking about it. Then they discovered that there was a national alliance, as we did in Contra, Costa County, that they could join forces with. So we know that there's strength in numbers. And now NAMI National, which is based in the East out of Virginia, is really strong and leading a lot of the efforts around 988, which is the non-police response to mental health and suicide prevention. Mm-hmm. It's leading the efforts around help, not harm, for those living with mental illness around how police respond. And it's taking a big leap forward around the home front and all the programs that they have put in place to address the needs of veterans, recognizing that veterans have identified as the leading cause for their challenges being, after substance abuse related issues, mental health. So it makes sense that NAMI would take this on.
Wow. So that 988 is like sort of like our 911 number that you would call for an emergency?
Right. And July 1st, it's every region is mandated that they have a plan in place, and there's some legislation around how it should be funded, but likely we'll see an increase in our cell phone bills to ensure that individuals can dial 988. Now, the suicide prevention part is already taken care of. Mm-hmm. Some states have included the mental health non-police response, but some have not yet, have not identified it. Some don't have a mobile crisis response team. So all they send out is law enforcement for what we call 5150, when a person is deemed to be a danger to themselves. Others are gravely ill. So we're really working hard in this country now to move away from police, right? Because they respond quickly and see mental health and when a person is having a crisis as a medical emergency versus a criminally based.
Yeah, we've been seeing some of that even in Chicago, where there's a sentiment growing around policing mm-hmm. activities and making sure that officers are properly trained and you have mental health professionals in alignment with them, when you're responding to things like this. Because a lot of tragedies happen because people don't understand what's going on. And as you said, if you're looking at it as a criminal action, purely, then your response can be very, very different from what it should be. It should be more appropriately a mental health response.
Right. So.
Yeah. So, and this would be on national television. I mean, this 988 number, and people should become more aware that this is, available and it's coming down the road. What do you think that communities should be doing? How can communities get more involved? Because we have, family members here in places like Chicago, and this is true throughout the country. So what would be your advice to people as far as joining a NAMI group or, getting involved in, setting up a 501c3 or, joining a bandwagon to make sure that we're addressing these mental health issues? Because I think it's really going to take that grassroots approach in order to really make a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, we are recognizing that a lot of the elected officials and people running for office are uplifting mental health, especially as we start looking at COVID and the impact it has on people's sense of wellness or mental wellness. So mm-hmm. I know that NAMI is often the go-to place before individuals recognize that there's a state or a city entity that's responsible for meeting the needs of their loved ones, that they pay taxes to have those governmental departments operate from. Nami is a non-clinical support, but we heal through supporting others. Like when you know that there's a route that someone else has taken, and there's strength in numbers, and our motto is "You are not alone." So lots of times NAMI are able to press the decision makers about how they should better serve those who live with mental illness. And the NAMI national website is just simply NAMI.org, and then you can go there and you can find a local affiliate. Mm-hmm. And with there being 600, it's kind of hard to go more than, 200 or 300 miles without running into an affiliate. Some are larger than others. We've been placed in a pretty good position in Contra Costa County because we have county funding, so we have governmental funding, so we are able to be fully present through normal business hours and on Saturdays. Some are still at that kitchen table with no office, but they're still doing some great work because it's family members who often can be identified as the case managers for their loved one when they're having a difficult time, because most regions don't have the staffing pattern that would support everyone who lives with a mental health challenge having a case manager. And, depending on the insurance people have, it's going to dictate the quality of services that they receive around their mental health challenge and getting support for it.
Yes, yeah. And, and one of the things that you mentioned is NAMI, NAMI.org, O-R-G, so people who are interested in looking at that. But also, you were mentioning before, increasing the cost of my phone bill. That's one thing I would pay for, to make sure that people in this country have adequate mental health. I would pay before I pay for, an extra tulip in the park, although I love the flowers and all that, I'm not putting it down, but, there's some things that are more important, like human concerns in these situations. But, what are your thoughts on this? And I brought this up in an earlier conversation, and right now COVID-19 is proving to affect the central nervous system, the brain. It's affecting the heart, it's affecting the kidneys, the liver. And we don't know what kind of interaction this is going to have with underlying other mental health conditions. So, the traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, and depression, and dementia, and Alzheimer's disease, all those other mental health issues, bipolar disorder. We don't know how this is going to affect the mental health status of people. So do you think that is something that we need to keep an eye on? And it's not from the clinical side, necessarily about what we're doing, but making sure that people are aware that this is something that's out there that may be occurring that we have to be aware of.
Well, there's been, sadly, some recent studies that have shown that individuals who live with schizophrenia, which is one of the most common causes of mental illness, and probably one of the illnesses that's the most debilitating for individuals who live with it, that they ran a very high risk of COVID, because sadly, it's not widely understood, but individuals who live with the more severe mental illness already die anywhere from 20 to 25 years earlier than the general population.
Yes.
So living with mental illness already puts you in a pretty, precarious situation about your ability to live a long, full life. So when you put COVID and schizophrenia together, it's really a deadly mix.
Yes, yeah. For the last couple of years, I've been warning about this in the background, because we had such a great focus on just hospitalizations and deaths, and that's the statistic everyone was following. But what is the actual physical impact and the mental health impact of, COVID-19? We know that, children also, haven't been going to school, and that has an impact on them as well. And then we have parents who do have mental health conditions as well, and they're trying the best they can to raise these kids, and that was impacting them directly too. So, we really need to be paying attention to this. The issue as a family unit, and especially for those people who have no one to turn to, have no family members,
Mm-hmm.
like our unsheltered, veterans living with
Yeah.
mental illness.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the recent studies from JAMA said that individuals who live with schizophrenia are 3 times more likely to die from COVID-19 than the general population.
3 times more
And
likely.
so,
Wow.
yeah. So when we start thinking about a person who lives with a diagnosis that comes with symptoms like paranoia, who hears voices, those voices are going to be even more difficult to manage, even though some people have the skill set to try and learn how to manage the voices. When you have this debilitating illness, and then on top of it, you're being bombarded with the news about COVID. So
Yes.
the risk of death is greater. And individuals who live with diagnoses such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, often, sadly, also live with diabetes, heart disease, and other conditions much younger than the general population, because some of the medications cause horrific side effects.
Yeah, because one of the terms I hate really, it's we always say social distancing, and I always had to remind people it's physical distancing, 6 to 8 feet. It's not social distancing. You still can contact people by phone, by email, by Zoom, or whatever you're doing, and that kind of thinking. Had people in isolation, and I had to stay away from everyone else, and the precautions you take, of course. Make sure you get fully vaccinated. It's the first thing you do. I just got my second booster dose 2 days ago, so I'm feeling much more comfortable. My niece, Leah Bowers, and Opraku now, her last name, is having a child, and I want to go to D.C. to be present for that next week, but I had to protect myself. So for people who who are out there who have mental health issues, the cutoff from caregivers, the cutoff from making sure they get their medications, not just for their mental health, but as you're indicating, for their physical health was important. And we really have to get back on track very quickly and make sure that we have the adequate resources going to support that.
Yes, and I really appreciate what you said earlier, because I was promoting social contact safely, because isolation was really difficult for people who already tend to decompensate when they can't have the physical presence of others. So your terminology, I wish I'd have heard it earlier as I was trying to express, that you need to remain as social as possible by using virtual tools and FaceTime, and, going into spaces where you can, appropriately be distanced, but don't give up trying to make social contact with individuals, because that did lead to a lot of depression.
Yes.
A lot of anxiety.
Yeah. But we're getting close on time. We have about a minute to go. But I am really, it is such an honor talking to you, because it sounds like you've been doing so much work to help people who are in this situation through Nami, and your efforts, both in pushing for the legislation side of it, and being an advocate for people who can't defend themselves, that need help, in the mental health arena. I just have to say, applaud you for that, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you for giving me a platform to talk about it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and so Gigi Crowder is an executive director of Nami, Contra, Costa in California, and Nami is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, an advocacy group founded by family members of people with mental illness. Make sure you go to the nami.org, nami.org, to find out more information, and we have these iconic people like Gigi Crowder in our life.